Hi, my name is Madi, and my partner Tristan and I will be arguing for the proposition that the U.S. should remove military troops from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. We will be doing this with three claims. Our significance claim being that the U.S. involvement in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria has created more problems than it can solve. That our heresy claim is that the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria perpetuates terrorist actions. And our solvency claim is that the U.S. should solely remove troops from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria to focus on endeavors more vital to the U.S. Since the terrorist attack on the Twin Towers on 9/11, the U.S. has been involved in many affairs regarding the Middle East. And for the past 18 years, the U.S. has been in an ongoing war with countries such as Iraq, Afghanistan, and now most recently with Syria. With the rise of terrorist groups such as ISIS within the Middle East, the U.S. claims the threatens is merely train and support local troops to fight these terrorist groups, even though the U.S. is subsequently continuing airstrikes and missile attacks on these countries. The effects of this involvement are proven to be detrimental to the U.S. So our significance claim is that the U.S.'s involvement in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria has created more problems that the U.S. cannot solve. The involvement in the Middle East has led to increased financial instability in the U.S. According to an article by the National Public Radio in February 2019, the U.S.'s public debt is now more than $22 trillion, the highest it's ever been. And according to the Costs of War project at Brown University, the Defense Department expects to spend roughly $15.3 billion in Syria next year, the highest level yet. So you might be wondering, where does the U.S. get all this money even though we're in debt? According to the Watson Institute of Brown University, the U.S. wars and military action in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria have cost American taxpayers $5.9 trillion since their involvement in 2001. And the total is almost $2 trillion more than all federal government spending during the recently completed 2017-2018 fiscal year. And this is quite apparent when we can see inflation rates increasing from 2001 to now. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, the prices in 2018 are 41% higher than the average prices in 2001. To put that in perspective, $100 in 2001 is $141 now. So the next point that I want to bring up in our significance claim is that the ongoing turmoil in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria has led to the loss of many military troops. According to the Watson Institute of Brown University on the costs of war, over 6,900 U.S. service members and over 7,800 contractors have died in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. On top of that, right now there are 2,000 troops in Syria working as advisors to the Syrian Defense Forces, and 4 of them have died since 2015. And seeing how this war can be seen as a mistake, as an involvement that we shouldn't have been into, it's almost like these deaths are in vain. The next point I want to bring up is that the involvement in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria has made the U.S. less credible in what they say. According to an article by CNBC on U.S. engagement in the Middle East on April 2019, a disengagement from places like the Middle East was one of the key pledges that President Donald Trump had on his campaign trail. And his order to withdraw 2,000 troops in Syria last December was seen as the president's pushing towards this policy. But an article by ABC News says that last month, Trump signaled to the army leaders that he would like the U.S. to leave Syria as soon as possible. But Friday night's orders for precision airstrikes targets on Syria's chemical weapons capabilities prove that he wants to stay there longer. Our heresy claim is that the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria perpetuates terrorist actions. According to terrorists blame the U.S. for their problems. According to an article by The Atlantic on ISIS origins, when the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003, Anbari and Zarqawi, which are two radicalist leaders, led separate groups that were not a part of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Both pledged allegiance in 2004, showing that the invasion of the United States in Iraq actually brought together terrorist groups. And an article by newamerica.org on terrorism in America post 9/11 show that perpetrators are generally motivated by a mix of factors, including militant Islamist ideologies, dislike of foreign American policy in the Muslim world, and the need to attach themselves to an ideology or organization that gave them a sense of purpose. For many, joining a jihadist group or carrying out an attack allowed them to become heroes of their own. So it shows that these terrorists feel oppressed, and the only way that they can feel like they're a hero of their own ideologies is by attacking America. And the attack on Iraq led to an increase in terrorist groups because in an article by the Watson Institute of Brown University on the human costs of war, the U.S. invasion of Iraq has turned the country into a laboratory in which militant groups such as the Islamic State have been able to hone their techniques and recruitment and violence. The last point I want to bring up in the inherency is that the military involvement in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria has led to unnecessary civilian casualties and discomfort for those three countries. According to an article by Watson Institute of Brown University, more than 480,000 people have been killed by direct war violence in Iraq and Afghanistan. However, the vast majority of people that are being killed are Afghan, Pakistani, and Iraqi civilians. At least 244,000 have been killed in the fight. And this number is continually rising, and if not killed, they become refugees. According to the same source, billions of people living in the war zones have been displaced by the war. To this date, 8.4 million Afghanis, Iraqis, and Pakistanis are living as war refugees, and an additional 12.6 million Syrians are displaced as a result of the U.S. war against the Islamic State in Syria. Our sovereignty claim is that the U.S. should solely remove troops from Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan to focus on endeavors in the United States. The money used to fund the Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan war can be put into removing every U.S. citizen from below the poverty line. According to the AmericanProspect.org on poverty figures, in 2012, the number was 175.3 billion. This is how many dollars it would take to bring every person in the United States above the poverty line. In 2012, this number was just 1/4 of the 700 billion the federal government spent on the military. And according to a graph by Statista.com, shows that the amount of money the U.S. government spends per year, and between the years 2012 and 2017 alone, they spent $3.7 trillion on military endeavors, showing that they could have put the money elsewhere into improving the United States as opposed to trying to help another country. Thank you.